For over a quarter of a century, the best paintball teams in the world have gathered in Orlando, Florida at the end of the year to answer a simple question through a hard test. Who is the best on the biggest stage at the last event of the season? Over the years, the World Cup has been the scene of gunfight magic, a place of battle where skills earned through hard work, applied in the biggest of moments, has forged talented names into legend. But this year, the COVID pandemic has deferred dreams, stopped stories, and the entire sport at its highest level was put on hold. With only one NXL event in the books, the middle of the season became the longest offseason that we have ever had. But the brakes are now off. World Cup 2020 is just on the horizon, and the 4-day battle to see who is the world's best paintball team is almost here. Who will emerge as the champion? Go watch all of the intense battles now from the 2020 NXL World Cup, only on GoSports.com. The driving mission at Go Sports is to bring you the best paintball content and broadcast in the world, behind the scenes, in the pits, and on the field. To continue this mission, we're rolling out a renovated website platform across the board with easier search functions and a more robust chat system for better interaction with your fellow fans. Dive farther into the game with a new integrated stats portal. Get your insight into the game anytime, anywhere, with an improved functionality across all mobile devices. Check it out now. Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I got Tom Cole, the president of the NXL, in the seat today. We have some news to break. We have some discussions about the schedule format. A lot of big stuff going down today. Also, mark your calendars. This weekend coming up, January 15th through 17th, got the Pro Paintball Exhibition. Looking forward to that as we're kicking things off here in 2021, especially with this news. So some changes here. Well, first of all, Tom, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always good to have you on here. Obviously, and I mean, you've been, we had you on the show before, kind of talked about your history, and you've been kind of at the, the breaking wave of change with this sport for so long, working for different companies, different leagues. As we've, kind of got to where we are here in 2021, what a crazy year 2020 was. I mean, the fact you pulled off World Cup is a miracle. So thank you for that. But now we have the stage starting to set here for 2021 with some change. So I'm just going to pretend like we haven't talked at all and you haven't given me any information about this. So we can just kind of lay it out. I'll ask you some questions about what's going on here and how things are going to be structured moving forward here with the NXL, because that's kind of the whole purpose of this, right? So you got some news to break here today.
Correct. And I don't think anyone really knows the system, because I've pitched so many different scenarios to so many different people that it's really confused the rumor mill to unprecedented levels. So, and first, I do want to give a shout out to Brian Barno. He's a field owner OXCC, and I've called him with some of this stuff, and he's always willing to throw in his field as any type of an option for us. And so it's been really, it's been a weight off my shoulder to know that I have this backup through him. So I just wanted to give him a little shout out. So, and I'd like to thank all the teams and people that I've called and harassed in the offseason to try and come up with a plan. So going into World Cup, I was already starting to create a hypothesis that Go Sports would see a largest set of viewership at the World Cup purely because of COVID and the fact that a lot of people were missing the event. So because they weren't at the event, people were watching the event. I added the Wild Dogs, who, after getting a little bit of ridicule online, performed very well at the World Cup. And our social media presence with the Wild Dogs did really well. And the Go Sports viewership not only went up about 18% overall at World Cup, but it went up about 40% throughout Latin America and about 60% in Colombia, which is where a lot of the Wild Dogs are from. So that leads me into an announcement of a new event that we want to add. And that event would be called the Champions Cup. This event would be played at January 28th of next year, January 28th through the 31st. I believe it's the 31st. And it would be the Pro Bowl weekend every year. so the weekend before the Super Bowl. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is some viewership, right? We're trying to condense our viewerships into one event from around the world. And two, to make a true Super Bowl style event that the whole world can participate in. And I'll explain to you why on that. So the Europeans and the Russian legions are a perfect example. They play the American series because that is where they believe the best paintball is played. And the only way to play true pro paintball in their mind was to play and try and win in the US. And that's a little unreasonable to think that the best team from Europe shouldn't be able to compete in the World Championship. So that's why we're calling this the Champions Cup, because we are going to bring in the top 12 teams from around the world in every division to play in this event. And it will be 8 teams from America. So I'm going to talk mostly about the United States market today on the show, but we'll be bringing in teams from Europe.
I just got it just real quick because people will probably be wondering, and again, I don't want to interrupt too much, but people are probably like, okay, well, how are we going to figure out how those teams are across the world? You know, because and when you had, and it was interesting because when we did talk, and I said, but like I said, I'm going to pretend like we didn't, just so I can ask these questions that people out there are probably going like, okay, this is a lot of change. But like you said, it was like, how close is this to what we had talked about before? You're like, there's a lot of difference, and there's still some of the stuff that's the same. But that was kind of my question before, and that's the first thing that pops in my mind. Okay, I think this is really cool, but how are you going to figure out who those top teams are, and then how's that going to represent? Is it South America? Like, how, just kind of break down what that means from like a worldwide perspective, because we got to talk about, most of the people watching here obviously care about the biggest league in the world, which is the US NXL, but this is kind of a forward thinking move to try to incorporate the rest of the world to try to do the best, hashtag grow the game, right? As everyone always says. But yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the international reach of this and how you're going to figure out who those top teams are.
So basically what we're looking to do is have every team that wins a major NXL event wins an automatic berth. So in Europe, we have 3 events next year. In Latin America, we're looking to have and partner with someone down in Latin America to have a Latin American championship qualifier for this event. And then our American teams, we're going to have 4 events. I don't know if you've seen the schedule yet. We'll have 4 major events in the United States. So the winners of each one of those will move on. And then we will allow the next 4 highest ranked teams to come in those divisions. And it will always equal 8 from the US. So if, let's say, X Factor goes on a sweep and they win all 4 events, we would still end up with 8 American pro teams, because then we would just go with the next 7 highest ranked teams. I doubt they're going to win all 4, because I'm sure Dynasty is going to get a win in there somewhere. So that's how we're doing it. And it will be different from different regions. And we're obviously hoping to expand this at one point in time. I would like the Australians, Africa, and Asia to get into this. But for right now, we're keeping it to those 3. And we're not even 100% done with the South American version yet. We're still in negotiations with that.
Okay, so essentially, as it stands right now, you're going to have Europe, South America, and the United States. And so you're going to be bringing the top 12 teams over from each one of those regions?
No, it'll be 12 total altogether at the event.
Total.
From each different division.
Okay.
So 12 pro teams will be playing at the Championship Cup, at the Champions Cup. So, and there's a bunch of reasons for this. We wanted to be the most watched paintball event probably ever. And 2, it's to give everybody a chance to win the World Championships without traveling all over the planet. And we always get this argument, is Dynasty the best team ever? Has Impact or Heat surpassed that? Is X Factor one of the best teams? Is Aftershock one of the best teams? And to be honest, a lot of these wins that these guys got, Dynasty got picking on us in the NPPL. Aftershock won half those things as 10-man in the woods. So this is the longest we've had a standardized format as far as the match style X ball that we're running. And so I'm trying to start a new era of paintball where we can truly have a world championship.
Okay, so then paint me the picture of what and maybe we can bring in, because I got some more questions for you. I'm sure everyone online does too, but let's kind of bring in the schedule if we can and get a look at the schedule. So paint me a picture of what the year is going to look like. And then are we still going to have 20 pro teams here in the States is another question people are probably wondering.
So yes, we plan on still having 20 pro teams here in the United States. And we'll have 20 pro teams in Europe.
Okay. So 20 pro teams in the States, 20 pro in Europe, and then I'm guessing as many as you can get, up to 20 once things, the dust settles and you figure out exactly how it's going to go down in South America. Because there might be some people listening
Correct.
down there going like, well, hell, this might be our chance to shoot the moon.
And we'll probably be closer to 6 teams in Latin America, 6 to 8.
Okay. Okay, so 6 to 8 down in Latin America, 20 in Europe, and then 20 over here in the States. So then let's talk about the States real quick, and maybe again, like I said, we could get that schedule. So what is the season going to look like then? Because you said you're going to kind of do away with the opens. So up until COVID hit, other than the Great Recession, when we had to go down to 4 events, then it's been a typical 5-event schedule since the dawn of time, essentially. But now you're going to go to 4 major NXL events here in the States?
Correct. We're going to go to 4 major events in the U.S., and we're going to go to 2 events that we're calling opens. This year, they are going to be amateur opens, so we're not going to have the pro or semi-pros playing at them. And they will be at paintball parks, and there will be no layout released for those 2 events. So we're doing a couple things differently. One, in the pro division, obviously we've gone to 4 events, pro and semi-pro. So those 4 scores will count towards your ranking towards the Super Cup. But on the D3 and D4 side, we are allowing teams to only use 3 scores. So by opening up the schedule and having these open events in Dallas and Sacramento, because of COVID, we're concerned about trying to run a major all across the country and bringing in all these people. So we will run a more local-centric tournament at Paintball Fit and Capital Edge Paintball that will cater towards the amateur market in those areas, so they have an equal opportunity to win a berth into the Super Cup. So in the past, in PSP and us, we've tried to include all 5 scores in your national ranking, which is really a challenge for a D4 team. So by dropping this down to 3, I think we become a little more easily attainable goal to being a top D4 or D3 team.
So and if I got the decent amount of questions for you, but let's talk about that amateur side of things in the divisional side of things. So you're going to go with, they only have to make 3, but they have the chance to attend. Correct. I mean, if they want to come to all of them, assuming they can, but they only need 3 because, and do you feel that as that, and I'm sorry, say that again. You broke up for a second.
I'm sorry. And they can drop their lowest score. So if they want to play 5 events and drop their lower score, they can.
Okay. So I guess that does provide incentive for the team, like the hardcore divisional teams that do want to get after it and go to every single one, in the sense that you do get to drop your lowest score. But then the teams, because I'm wondering, you obviously interact with a ton of the divisional guys. Is that something that was kind of keeping them away a little bit? Or in the sense that, they maybe, it's labor intensive and capital intensive to put a paintball team together, because you need to practice so much, even at the top divisional level. Obviously, you get a little farther down, it helps practice as much as you can. But did you think that this was like a complaint that you had been getting over the years, and that was kind of a remedy for a situation that people were bringing to you, kind of frustrated that, hey, man, we have to go to all these, that's just impossible with, for our whatever team it may be? Is that something you had been getting a little bit of?
I mean, I've heard that my entire career. It's just, if you want to play local paintball and then your next step is the NXL, you go from playing 4 events in your home state to your first event being in Vegas if you live in Baltimore. So it's got to be a financial challenge. And we spend so much money traveling and hotels and rental cars. I'm just trying to make it more attainable to the lower end teams that maybe haven't the huge financial ability of some of these other teams. And I want to make it the best team moving on to the Super Cup. I just don't want it to be the team with the most money, which I'm sure the team with the most money is not going to be happy, but I'm trying to make it every man's game and keep it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so 6 total events. Only 4 of those the pros will be going to, and those are the ones highlighted in blue. Kissimmee, Philadelphia. So Kissimmee in April, end of April, beginning of May. Philadelphia, June, end of June, and then Chicago, and then Kissimmee again, and then Dallas and Sacramento for the amateur only events or the divisional only. But and then are you changing how many pros can play? Because that then might have an arms race where pros can come and play. And then I've also listened to some criticism from the semi-pro guys that kind of want it changed as far as qualifications of who can and can't play with them there. Have you addressed any of those concerns? Or I mean, maybe we'll start with has anything changed at all with how many pros can play on a divisional team?
No, it has not changed. And I'd have to step back and defer to Jason Trozel on that. We had a semi-pro call, and there was some discussion about changing it. But we will, as of right now, we're going to keep it the same, to my knowledge. Yeah, because we don't want to allow the semi-pros to have more pros, because then it does create that arms race that we're talking about. So no, I'm pretty happy with the way the semi-pro division is going. Obviously, there's some teams I know. Yeah, there's some teams that would like to add more pros to their rosters, but I think we need to keep it the same way.
And then what about, because I think I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to one of the semi-pro guys, and they were, basically saying that, well, I've had this discussion as well as a couple different ways to take this, but, some of the guys that are ranked semi-pro, like once you kind of make that big bite and you go into the semi-pro division. So how about that? Is semi-pro, are they going to be like, where do they sit in this? Are they only going to be at the majors, or are they going to be at the amateur opens as well too?
Semi-pro will only be at the majors. So
Okay.
yeah, so D2 will be the one other event that's at the amateur opens. Semi-pro will be following the pro circuit.
Okay. So 6 total events, 2 where the pros will not be there. The 4, big events where everyone's going to be there. And then 20 pro teams. Okay. I'm starting to wrap my head around this now. Like, got to kind of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to give one other thing. There's 2 things. One, a big question apparently everybody's asking is why no Vegas? We're concerned about Vegas for COVID. It's still under a little bit of shutdown, and it would be expensive for us to ship everything out there, and then we're relying on everybody to be able to get in. Florida is a state that we know is event friendly even during COVID after World Cup, and we feel comfortable being able to host an event as early as April there. We're hoping that the COVID situation is down by June, and we'll be looking at going back to Vegas in whatever the next year is, 2022 is where we'll be going. And the other thing I want to touch on is the prize package for the Champions Cup. It's a $250,000 prize package, and last place just to qualify is guaranteed a prize. So we're trying to create a situation where it's favorable for everybody to go, even the last place team, because in the end, it is the best of the best coming to compete.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's badass. Okay, and then the one question I have, like, again, I got a few questions, but so now we have a Champions Cup and we got the World Cup, right? So historically the World Cup, so the World Cup is still going to have its it's still going to be a difficult tournament to win, because it is still that last big event where all the teams are going to be there. You're going to have 20 pro teams there. It's going to be difficult to win. It's the end of the reason why World Cup is, some people are like, World Cup's just like any other event. And I would argue that it's not, just because it has that, that moniker of the last event of the year. You've had all year long to get your team dialed in. There are no more excuses. And it's kind of the last you're going to see of that current incarnation of that squad before you head into the next year when, moves start to be made. So there's, again, a couple questions there. One is how are you looking at, in people's minds, the difference between the World Cup and the Champions Cup? I mean, to me, again, because you are bringing those teams over, it is a kind of a completely different event. And then how are you going to work it with the rosters? So if because you have guys that kind of, change pro teams at the end of the World Cup to go into the new season, but now they have to stay on that squad. Like, well, you don't have to do anything. There's not necessarily a gun to your head. But now you're going into the end of January where that's going to change the offseason dynamic quite a bit, I think, for those top teams.
All right, so a couple things. The problem with the World Cup, especially on the pro side, it's not the same on the individual side, but on the pro side, I do think it's the same event as the other events. So I'm one of those people that you don't agree with. But it's not fair that the only way to qualify for the World Championship is to be an American team, basically, other than the Russians. So this will truly be the best in the world, where the World Cup is more the best of America. I'm trying to give the Europeans and the Latin Americans a chance to become one of the top teams in the world without having to play 5 events in America. And, you know, a lot of this comes from talking to people like the Tauntauns were adamant that they were going to play in the United States all 5 events. It's just cost prohibitive to play in the opposite continent of you because you think the competition is better. So I'm hoping that we get away with that and Europe starts to develop its own talent and stops, you know, relying on American mercenaries to go over there and play. I want, you know, the Droogs to be the #1 team out of Germany and, you know, the Firm to be the #1 team out of the UK, to come over here and put it on the line for Europe to see who the best team is in the world. And then I want the dynasties and the heats to put them up against that and see what happens. That to me is going to be epic paintball. And yes, we will be leaving out some of the people, right? And it will change the dynamic as far as the way the world looks. But just look at the NFL. So as of a couple of weeks ago, some teams are already working on what they're going to do for next year as far as their rosters are concerned. But the teams that are moving on to the playoffs and to the Super Bowl, they're just worried about the Super Bowl. So yes, I think that this is going to hit a perfect sweet spot where everybody is going to be looking forward to this event because it's going to be dead in the middle of winter, right in the off season. The teams that have made it are going to be, you know, gearing up for it and really putting everything they got into it because the prize package is so big. And everybody at home is going to be missing the fact that they're not at this event and they're going to want to watch the event. And then we're hoping to sell that off to outside sponsors, say, look at how many people watch this event.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's, you know, and this is a longer conversation, but and I've had this conversation constantly. This is a conversation we're always going to have. But if you look at the history of professional sports, basically what they're doing is they're saying, hey, there's this crazy sports soap opera happening, and I'm going to give you a reason to give a shit about this. And they, you know, and over time between radio, you know, baseball became huge when newspapers started to blow up in the major cities and radio was a thing before the advent of television. But the, you know, profusion of daily newspapers and the profusion of radio stations and the ability to tell sports stories exploded the popularity of baseball. Then, you know, football comes around and television starts to get out there, and then, you know, football, boxing, each one of these kind of has their own arc as far as how they got huge. But at the end of the day, we're just asking the world to care and we have to tell them a good story to do that. So, you know, and you know, it's, you know, that doesn't need to be the most simplest thing. I've, you know, had constant arguments sometimes with people. It's like, we need to make paintball as simple as possible so I can explain it to a grandma. I'm like, dude, have you seen how crazy online gaming is getting? Like, try to explain Dota to somebody. Like, explain Dota, you know, which is an online game. I don't play, but I have some friends that are super into it, and they're trying to explain to me that there's like 100 heroes and all this stuff, this going on. And I'm like, dude, good luck trying to explain that to your grandma. But they're making millions of dollars playing it online, and it's definitely not simple. So simplifying things is definitely not necessarily the golden road to riches as far as, you know, interest from the world is concerned. You got something for me? I can see you wanted to get a word in edgewise here.
Yeah. So, and I annoy the heck, like Travis snapped me a little bit at World Cup, but I annoy my local people that I call, or my people that are in my speed dial, with asking them questions and opinions. And I was pitching 5-man. I pitched everything known to man to try and come up with some type of a change that I thought was going to work. And at World Cup, I sat with some people from outside sports, and I sat with some people from the scenario world, and we watched the finals on Sunday, and it really was captivating, even to them who didn't understand it. And, you know, I explained it to them a little bit, and then they enjoyed the storyline. It was an easy story to follow. And I think, you know, a lot of these scenario guys and other paintball people, they watch these events at practices or at local parks. And I realized that there's no buzzer and there's no scoreboard. And so to them, everybody just suddenly stands up and walks back to their pit. They don't really know who won. So it wasn't until World Cup that they really understood what all the hype is about. Because when you play it and you're involved in that drama of the match, it's really exciting to watch. So.
Well, it is going to make it a very potent race from a story perspective in the three continents, at least so far, that will be included as it stands now. Again, like you said, you guys are going to try to branch out to other places in the world, but it takes time to see who's going to be it's because it's the top four, right? So the top four as it stands right now are going to move on, and with that prize package being what it is, you definitely want to be in that top four, because then you stand to potentially win a decent amount of coin. So that's going to make that interesting as far as the the race to get into the Champions Cup is concerned.
Let me explain exactly how everybody's. So America is going to put 8 teams in every division, and that's one of the questions we're getting on the divisional side. So on the divisional side, we're going to take the winner of every major tournament, and then it will be the next highest ranked team to get us to a total of 8. So there's always going to be 8 teams going, and everybody's just going to have to watch. So going into World Cup, you could win World Cup and get an automatic berth to the Super Cup, or you can be ranked in the top 8 overall and get to go to Super Cup. So as long as you're in that top 8, you're going to get to go to Super Cup.
Okay. I'm just trying to play hey, let's just explain that as clear as possible. So to repeat that again for the divisional guys, just so everyone that may have heard that, they can kind of have, again, something to kind of shoot for and remember here, because this is a decent change. I mean, we haven't had a change like this in a long time. So it's probably going to take, like you said, you probably been sound like a broken record trying to explain this once you guys did start to set this in stone, but this is a decent change. So explain it again for the divisional side of things.
So on the divisional side, if you look at the schedule that we have posted, if you win any of the blue events, which we're calling majors, you get an automatic berth to the Super Cup. So let's assume that's going to be 4 different teams. Then you can use any 3 scores from the total of 6 there, and whatever puts the top 8 ranked teams, so the next 4 highest ranked teams in your division will get to move on as well. Does that make sense? That's in D3.
Absolutely. No, it totally makes sense.
And D2.
I just wanted to get that schedule up there, make it crystal clear so everyone knows what they're shooting for here. And obviously this information will be available online. We're going to be talking about it all year long because it is going to make it a little bit more complex of a race. There's more variables involved in this now. And I think that, making the knowledge a little, making it a little bit more of a diverse knowledge set to try to figure out what needs to happen is, it's interesting to the people that really want to dive into it. So, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be interesting. Go ahead.
So there's 2 things that happen in the season. It's happened since the dawn of time. Is going into that 4th event, people are either chasing the series title or they've given up. And that's why the 4th event has always had the least amount of attendance, because people decide they're not in the running for the World Cup or for the World Championship and they bow out of that event. This creates 2 dramas. And I'm going to quote Alan from NRG. He's always like, there's 2 races going on, someone to win the title and someone to not be last. We are now creating some drama in that 6th through 12th ranking place because someone's going to get to go to the Super Cup. And last year, it would have been damaged, would have been the team that made it in under that system. So they hadn't won an event all year. So this gives them a little bit of a reboot and a chance to move on to go win that event. So.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm getting a text message from Thomas Taylor. He said, ask Tom if teams that make Commanders Cup can make pickups after World Cup from other pro teams before Commanders Cup happens. That's a good question, Thomas.
So no, tell him stop trying to steal people. That's going to be
Infamous is loading up. Infamous is trying. Thomas, I just want to say, Infamous is they're loading up, man. They're trying to make a run. They could be really good this year. So I could see where at.
We're not going to allow them. Let's just use an example. Let's say Dynasty doesn't make it, right? And Infamous does. I'm not going to let them pick up Ryan Greenspan, right? So we're going to put some rules in place. I don't have the exact details on that, and we're going to we'll have a think tank session with the pro teams and the semi-pro teams to kind of decide that. I did a call the other day with the top 10 semi-pro teams, and I thought it was really productive. And I thought they were, in a shout out to paintball teams, they were very professional, and they looked at it purely from a how to grow the sport category and not necessarily what would benefit each one of them. So I was really impressed. So we'll discuss that and find out the proper system. But the intent is not allow teams to reboot before the Super Cup. I want this to be the Super Bowl. with the team that you started the year with, not continuing on.
So I got another question from Ryan Greenspan. He said, "Is it mandatory to play all 4 events? If I win event number 1, I'm automatically in Super Cup."
No. Yes, you will automatically be in Super Cup, but yes, you will have to play the rest of the season. Apologize. And that's a bigger conversation. We're looking to go to. It is mandatory.
So it is mandatory. Okay, so it's mandatory for the pro teams to play the entire season, possibly to avoid getting relegated. So how is relegation going to work? That's probably another question people are thinking about, because like you said, Alan said, who's going to take last and who's going to take first, who's going to have to bump down and then who's going to bump up from semi-pro. That's always a conversation we're having every year. This year, different, obviously, with only 2 events and different situation there. But how's that going to work?
So we are going to relegate based on the 4 events. So if I'm not even going to name a team, but if I'm Bad Company and we are last place in the pro division after the World Cup, we will be the pro team relegated. The semi-pro team that is going to move up and take that spot will be the highest ranked semi-pro team after the Super Cup. And so we will heavily weight Super Cup in that ranking, but it will be based on an overall year as opposed to just one event. And that was purely from them. They were the ones that implemented that and wanted to do that.
Okay, so say that again then. So as far as for the relegation and points with Super, if you make it to Super Cup, I don't know how you'd be that bad, but so sorry, say that again. You're heavily weighting the Super Cup.
So on the team that moves up, it is going to be the top ranked semi-pro team after the Super Cup ends. Yeah. Super Cup will be heavily weighted, but it won't be just off that one event. So if you're 8th place going into Super Cup and then you win the Super Cup, you may not necessarily win the pro berth if a team won all 4 events through the season and then kind of second at Super Cup. They would win that berth, because we want to benefit consistency and not just necessarily quality at one time.
Yeah. So as far as so obviously we were getting some questions from the pros. Thomas asked that question, and guys, if you have my phone number and you're a pro or a semi-pro or anyone out there and you have questions for Tom, text me right now. I can't see this stuff on Facebook, so I just like to focus on the guests at the time. So I can't, if you're throwing questions out there on Facebook, I can't see that. If we have enough questions, we'll get Tom back on and ask him more questions. But so as it stands right now, as far as the rosters so do rosters lock? When do rosters lock for Super Cup? When is that? Is it before World Cup? Has that changed at all? And then not just for the pros, but also for the divisional ranks as well too.
So we do not, I don't believe, lock the rosters for the divisional ranks, but we will be locking the pro guys after the 3rd event. And I just want to clarify, because everybody's texting me from my group. I keep calling it the Super Cup because I'm tying it in with the
Champions. It's Champions Cup. Yeah, I was going with this is new for me too. Matt Angles just texted me. He's like, Champions Cup in bold. So yeah, Champions Cup, not Super Cup. I'm sorry, but you were saying. So no, the rosters are not going to lock for the divisionals?
So we will do something for them. We haven't decided the exact format for that for the Super Cup, how many of them they're going to have to bring to the Super Cup from their roster that they played. So we're still working on that detail. Champions Cup.
Cup. It's all good, man. It's new. I'm still trying to I'm trying to wrap my head around this too, man. We haven't changed things in a while, so
that's how the Super Bowl got called the Super Bowl. They kept using it as a holding place for the real name, and it just caught on, and they ended up using it. But so I'm doing the same mistake they did, but it's going to be the Champions Cup.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's okay. So here, so it's 4 big events, the 4 majors. We got the Amateur Opens at Dallas. Now, do we know what fields these are going to be at yet? Is that something that and then also we should probably talk about European dates. But let's just start with that. Where are these? Dallas and Sacramento.
Paintball Fit and Capital Edge Paintball.
Okay.
And the European dates released on Friday, I believe.
Yeah. So the European dates. So yeah, it's so I'm just getting questions about. Hold on, I'm getting some questions coming in here. So before we get to the European dates, this is from Joey Blute. So divisional teams can bring non-qualified. It said so divisional teams can bring the non-qualified pro team players. No lock ? Is the question from Joey. So if you make it as a divisional team.
So no, we
So
obviously are not going to allow D3 team to win a berth at the Super Cup and then pick up Damage, who apparently is expecting not to make it. No, give Joey Blue a shot there. No, we obviously are going to have some system for locking those rosters. I just haven't come up with a good system yet, and we'll probably come up with that in the next week after talking to some of the divisional guys.
Okay. So to be determined as far as how the rosters are going to lock. The rosters will be locking for the pros, which again, I think it's going to make it. Hold on a sec. We got another one coming in. Yeah. So, let's talk about the European dates.
So they were just up on the screen there.
Oh, there they go. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to paintball parks in Europe for the first two events. And the third event, we're waiting to determine the venue. We've cut that series down to 3 events, obviously for COVID reasons. Europe is currently under lockdown. And so Europe is really a wait and see. I'm hoping they get the ball rolling over there and get some stuff open back up. But yes. So people are asking a lot about 5-man too. We'll have the same system for the 5-man as well. I know I keep talking about X-Ball. But 5-man will also have a Super Cup option. I know they're same divisions.
Okay. So, sorry, say that again. I was just looking at the schedule. And
so we will also have a Super Cup for the 5-man as well. We talk X-Ball a lot on this show, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the 5-man will have a Super Cup as well.
So the 5-man, what about so 5-man will have a Super Cup. What about the Woods Ball stuff? Is that going to have a Super Cup as well?
Not this year, no.
Okay. What is your plan for that?
It's a secret. So next year we're only doing 2 events, which I got a lot of grief about having 2 events. But yes, we're going to do 2 events. We're going to do 2 events, one at Renix Park and one at OXCC, which is Brian Bardo's field that I mentioned earlier. And the championship is going to be at Renix Park. I'm intentionally keeping that series light because I'm trying to allow some of these other events. We got the ICC, we got, the Woods Ball World Cup. We have all these other events that are coming up, and we're trying not to just completely run out all those other events. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to keep it to 2 events. Maybe next year I am looking to move a Champions Cup like system with the 10-man stuff, but for right now we're going to keep it to the NXL.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to cover before I let you go?
I think I've opened up enough can of worms on this call. No, that's good.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to have you on again as soon as we possibly can. But yeah, interesting turn of events here with with the new Champions Cup. It's going to be going down at the end of January, not this year, but the upcoming year, kind of uniting the tribes with Europe and South America. Obviously, World Cup going to be the same, 4 pro events, 6 total events with those amateur-only events that are going to be held at Paintball Fit and at Dave Baines' field up in Sacramento, I believe.
Correct.
Is that where you said that one was going to be? Correct? Cool. Yeah, so hopefully once the dust settles, we might have to have you back on to talk about it a little bit more. But Tom, I really appreciate your time. And then, yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody down in Florida at the event going down this weekend, the Pro Invitational. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to have more shows coming at you here very soon. We are going to have the Tactics, Ryan Greenspan. We recorded that breaking down the biggest event or biggest game of the year, the one you were talking about, that World Cup final, which was a really dramatic and amazing game. And Ryan and I go blow for blow on that one. So any last words, Tom, before I let you go?
Yeah, I want to suggest everybody go over and check out Ryan Greenspan's YouTube channel, The Spick and Span Show. I have done a lot with Dynasty talking about this and vetting this idea. So feel free to brainstorm with those guys. And I actually am planning to be down at the Pro Tour event, and maybe I could be on the show there and answer some more questions.
This upcoming weekend?
If that's okay.
Of course. Yeah, I love having you on. Plus, you always get to people are always throwing questions at you. So anytime I can get you in the seat, used to not want to do interviews. So now I'm happy when you're willing to do them. But yeah, so I would love to have you on down there and we can talk a little bit more.
Yeah,
you're the president. You have to do interviews. It's part of the job.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm doing.
All right. Well, again, Tom, thank you so much. You know, you are always in the trenches trying to make this better. So I do appreciate that. I know you catch flack, but presidents, as we see, they catch a lot of flack. It's just kind of part of the gig, you know. But I do appreciate the work you've done over the years. And this is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to see how this all kind of plays itself out. It is going to create a little more narrative as far as who's going to make it to that. Obviously, the standard narrative throughout the events and then more events. Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. So, Tom, thank you so much. Looks like you might have something for me before you go. Anyone else you want to thank or anything else you want to say?
No, we're good. No, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. And again, like I said, event coming up this weekend here, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, down in Florida. Going to get on a plane here shortly. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'll see you guys this weekend.